Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Today we gather to remember the life of Michael Francis Shellshear, a brother, an uncle, a son, a doctor, and a wonderful friend to those who knew him. And firstly, I want to thank you for being here today as we gather to remember his life. I want to thank you for the expressions of love and condolences. I know that your presence here today means a lot to Michael's family, to Rod, to Katie, to Wendy, to Anthony, Angela, James and Andrew and their families, and those close to him. While Michael never married and had no children of his own, his nieces and nephews were his family, and he lived to see them happy. None more so than Rod, his protege, if you like, his mentee, his best friend, and more recently his carer. And so on their behalf, I'd like to thank you for coming along this morning as we gather to remember his life. While your presence here today is an encouragement, it's also a source of comfort. You know, we gain some comfort today and over the coming days and weeks from those who have suffered loss before, who've experienced the pain of losing a loved one. And so we draw alongside Rod and the families, and we comfort as we've been comforted. If you've lost a loved one, you may have some idea of what they're going through, and you can provide that comfort through a hug, a kind word, or just being near. And I think your attendance today is a comfort to them and a testament to Michael's life. Michael's passing has left a void that will not be easily filled. So again, thank you for being here and for loving on the family today. Michael was born on the 24th of March 1931 to Doris and Kenneth Shellshear, the fourth of 5 boys: Stuart, Graham, Barry, Michael and Paul. He was born in Lambton, Newcastle, about an hour up the road from here, and some years later the family moved to Sydney, and Michael attended school at Gordon Public, North Shore Boys, and then on to Sydney University, where he completed his medical degree before specialising in radiology. Michael went into practice with his father, also a radiologist, in Macquarie Street in the city. Wally is going to tell us a little bit more about Michael's professional life, but I'll mention that he also spent 3.5 years in 2 London hospitals, Central Middlesex and the Atkinson Morley, where the CT scanner and methodology was developed in the late 60s. Atkinson Morley Hospital was in Wimbledon, which was the scene of one of the highlights of Michael's life, but more about that shortly. I had the pleasure of meeting with Rod, Katie and Wendy this week and listening to their reminiscences of Michael's many visits to Brisbane. There would always be a trip to David's Chinese restaurant on Elizabeth Street in the city, long since closed, where he'd treat them all to a great meal. As I said, David's is closed, but it was a fancy treat in those days. You had to go upstairs. Michael was generous to a fault and very loyal towards his family. Do you remember when colour TV came out in 1974? Oh, half of you probably not old enough to remember that, but anyway. He bought the family their first colour set. He never forgot her birthday. Wendy fondly remembers her first Walkman. Now, I'm sure there's some people here that don't know what a Walkman is. But simply put, he was generous to a fault and he loved his family. Michael lived in the northern suburbs for 34 years. While still living there, he bought the property at Palmdale in 1987 and would come up, him and Rod, on weekends and work on the property. But again, Rod will have a little more to say about that. He moved up here in 2000. A close friend of Michael's was a man named John Parker. John managed a couple of tennis players that you may or may not have heard of, Tony Roche and John Newcomb. And through that association, Michael got to know these 2 tennis players and they attended Michael's famous New Year's Eve parties. Michael could throw a party. As a result of this friendship, Michael and John Parker were invited to accompany John and Tony to Wimbledon in 1971. You may remember that John Newcombe successfully defended his title in 1971, and upon his return to the hotel room, he gave Michael the racket that he used to win the title, which is on display here today, along with the 1971 official Wimbledon program, upon which he'd written, "Thanks for the support from the world's #1 doctor. Good luck, John Newcombe." For his 70th birthday, Michael received a card which said, "Hope you made good use of this racket over the last 100 years. Happy 70th, John Newcombe." So you can tell that not only he had a sense of humour, but he had a good relationship with Michael. Sadly, John Parker died from testicular cancer at age 34. But before he passed, he gave Michael a pair of silver cufflinks, each with an elephant on. Michael had the elephants removed and put on a silver chain, which he wore up until his recent hospital admission. Michael had enjoyed reasonably good health up until about the end of 2020, when he started to slow down a little. He was eventually diagnosed with myelodysplastic syndrome, or MDS, a cancer of the bone marrow. Treatment was via transfusions and chemotherapy. Michael had the transfusions but decided against the chemo. About 4 weeks ago, he was taken to Gosford Hospital by ambulance, and the paramedics advised that he should leave his jewellery at home. And so he took off his beloved elephant necklace and handed it to Rod for safekeeping. Once he was settled in the hospital, Rod tried to return the necklace, but Michael said, "I've no need for this anymore. I want you to have it. Please put it on." Every time Rod visited after that, Michael would check to see that he was wearing it. He was in hospital for a couple of weeks before he was transferred to the Berkeley Vale Care Community, where he passed quietly last Tuesday. We remember him today. As I said before, Wally Cause is going to give us a outline of his professional life. Thank you, Wally.
I'll just take a moment to have a look at Michael's picture. It's such a wonderful photograph. Now, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Michael Shellshear, I've been asked to present an account of medical practice with Michael Shellshear in the period 1981 to 1995. I deemed this to be an honour and approached the task with respect. I hope that during this presentation you might experience some of your own warm recollections of time with Michael Shellshear, a truly remarkable man. I first met Michael in October 1981 as a locum tenens in the radiological practice of Shellshear, Barrett, Anderson and Stephen, and I progressed shortly after that to full partnership in 1982. Michael and I quickly formed a working relationship in the area of spinal imaging and treatment, and that remained a bond which was firm with us until his recent passing. The partnership provided radiological services in the private area at 51 Palmerston Road, Hornsby, and also 66 Pacific Highway, St Leonards. It also provided hospital radiological services at the Hornsby and Ku-ring-gai District Hospital, 80% of all services, and 100% of all services at the Sydney Adventist Hospital. Various partners also undertook visiting radiological services on a sessional basis at the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, the Royal North Shore Hospital and the Mater Hospital. From our first encounter, I could glean that Michael had lived an earlier bon vivant life. There were rare insights into this from a man who was now a structured and deliberate person working in radiology, balancing work, leisure and new pursuits. Michael was a conservationist, and in our practice we could have been labelled then an early green enterprise. Wastage was minimised, and by this approach staff salaries were optimised and private radiology practice was affordable to the general community. As an example, patient cloth gowns were all sewn by staff who appreciated the additional income they were able to make out of hours. We had a washing machine and dryer, and all of the gowns were washed and dried during the course of the normal working day. If times got quite hectic, then some of the staff would take it home and do the washing again, supplementing their daily working income. There were numerous examples of such, one of them being our reuse of surgical spinal needles, which were sterilised and regularly resharpened by surgical tool makers. Spinal imaging and treatment was an early interest of Michael's, and during our association this matured and expanded. Michael had a close working relationship with many referring specialists, in particularly orthopaedic and neurosurgical spinal surgeons. During this time we fostered this connection, and at least once a month we had early Tuesday morning meetings at the Adventist Hospital with surgical colleagues discussing results, outcomes and considering new techniques. Of particular pride and satisfaction for Michael was our introduction of chemonucleolysis. This was an alternative treatment to open surgery in the management of disc herniation causing sciatica or brachyalgia. In the 10 years which we worked together in the area of spinal imaging, we treated 1,500 such patients. And after Michael's retirement from active practice in this area in the next 8 years, I treated an additional 1,500 patients, and our overall success rate in this treatment was 80%. There were other areas of innovation. Michael was always somebody that questioned conventional medical wisdom, but he also always did this judiciously by discussing alternative new therapies with clinical colleagues, both medical and surgical. And these discussions were always respectful and meaningful. Until the onset of tinnitus in the mid-1980s, Michael was a keen pianist and organist. Whether it be his holiday home or his main residence, the area had to be graced with either an organ or a grand piano. At his home in Neutral Bay, he had an organ. At his holiday home in Palm Beach, he had a grand piano. And also on the farm in Oberon, he had a grand piano. Each Tuesday afternoon, Michael had a private piano lesson at his home. He said to me, I said, Michael, you're such a good pianist, why are you having piano lessons? And his response was, one can always improve. But this ceased with the tinnitus, and with some good fortune appeared Rod Shellshear, who I'm told doesn't read a note, but plays by ear. And Michael thought this was entirely satisfactory. After retirement from the medical partnership, Michael continued for some 2 years with visiting radiological services at the Adventist Hospital and Hornsby Hospital, but this wasn't the end of what he was doing. He, at this time, assumed the role of technical support person for Allen Organs in New South Wales. He would visit various churches and other organisations that had purchased the organ. He met quite amazing people during this time, and he helped most of them because quite a few of them were having difficulty with their organs. Michael was able to adjust the tuning and show them correct techniques. Beyond music and medicine, Michael was a capable and active mechanic, builder and gardener, and as such, in his various areas of residence, be it his main residence or his holiday home or farm, he worked with tradesmen and labourers, and as such he was able to walk the walk of the common man. He was a remarkable person, but he was also a humble person, and in associating with working people and understanding them, we formed a very, very close bond that remained throughout his life and my life. Michael Shellshear was my teacher, my friend. I am a better person for having known him, and I would say to him, I'm sure he's here listening, Michael, you are a truly remarkable man. We will miss you every day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. Rod, we'll hear from you.
Good afternoon. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all this afternoon as we continue in the celebration of Michael's life. My focus will be on my many years with him. Whilst in my 20s during the 1980s, I made regular trips from my home in Brisbane to Sydney for my holidays. During those visits, I'd always stay with Michael, and over time we became very, very close friends. He recognised my keen interest in classical music, theatre and the arts, and we attended many concert shows and exhibitions that were offered at the time. In early 1988, I moved into Michael's Neutral Bay home in Sydney to further my studies. He was a working radiologist and I an electrical engineer. It was during the next few years he became a much appreciated and respected mentor. Michael was a very keen and proficient organist, and due to his enthusiasm, he and his father built a pipe organ in their family home at Linfield. In 1974, he purchased the first Allen digital computer organ sold in Australia, and it was installed into his home. Later in the early 1980s, while still working as a radiologist, he became the New South Wales agent for Allen Organ Company. He was responsible for sales, and then I looked after the maintenance and repairs. Michael continued with this agency until around the year 2000. Knowing I was moving to Sydney, and with his keen and my interest in the garden, in August 1987 he found and bought the property at Palmdale. After purchasing an old Massey Ferguson tractor and wood chipper, together we spent many weekends clearing privet, lantana and other invasive trees and weeds that had been allowed to take over. During that time, Michael, with a little help from me, designed the house which took shape over the ensuing years. He tended the gardens and I focused on the house. Recently we look back with some pride at our achievements. Being interested in classical music, Michael, together with a dear friend, Lady Pat Harrison, subscribed to and attended Sydney Symphony Concert at the Opera House. This was to continue for over 30 years. As an aside, Pat, now 103, called Michael a couple of weeks ago to have a chat and send her love. Following his retirement from radiology practice, Michael continued to work helping people with their back problems. This he did for a number of years at Delmar Hospital DY, at no cost to the patients, many of whom showed their absolute gratitude. Over the years we travelled to Europe and the UK, trips to New Zealand, South Australia, Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania and New South Wales. Many of these trips included staying with friends and family. Michael did enjoy entertaining and throwing parties. This he did with style at his home in Sydney, as also at his weekend on the northern beaches. He had a well-known reputation for his many New Year's Eve parties that he held over many years. The photos you'll see shortly are testament to that. In 2015, we were invited to lessons at the Long Jetty Bridge Club. Although Michael played bridge many years ago, we felt we could not devote the time, but we decided to go along. Well, the rest is history. We have since played almost weekly until very recently and thoroughly enjoyed not only the game, but meeting so many people, a number of whom became our very, very close friends. I might take this opportunity to thank many for their support over the last month or so. Lastly, Michael and I for many years went shopping on Saturday morning, followed by breakfast at one of the cafes open at the time. As he was always a bargain hunter, as I would, we would always follow with a visit to the Sally's and Vinnie's. Upon my insistence, we'd also go to the cash converters in the local scrap metal yard on the way home. I often wondered what people would contemplate at the thought of a professional radiologist climbing piles of scrap metal in search of who knows what. One purchase from Vinnie's I well remember. Michael found a beautiful suit, and after close inspection, it appeared to have never been worn. He then properly paid for it, looked very, very happy with himself and left the store. Upon returning home, he was happier than ever with his purchase and declared that it was in fact new, having found a spare piece of materials and spare buttons in the pocket. Michael was an extremely kind, fair, generous and trustworthy man, almost to his fault, and his sense of humour was well known. To me, he was a wonderful mentor, my best mate and confidant, and finally, for a very short time, I became his full-time carer. I feel extremely fortunate and privileged to have him as part of my life for over 40 years. I would spend all those years again in a heartbeat because I loved him. Thank you for coming. He would feel justifiably proud. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Rod. We'll have the slideshow now. Thanks, Brent. We'll now look at some of those pictures taken over the years.
And I love you so. The people ask me how I've lived till now. I tell them I don't know. I guess they understand how lonely life has been. But life began again the day you took my hand. And yes, I know how lonely life can be. The shadows follow me, and the night won't set me free. But I don't let the evening get me down. Now that you're around me, and you love me too. Your thoughts are just for me. You set my spirit free. I'm happy that you do. The book of life is brief, and once a page is read, all but life is dead. That is my belief. follow me, and the night won't set me free. But I don't let the evening get me down. Now that you're around me.
Thank you. This time we're going to ask the family to place some flowers, and then anybody who would like to place a flower also will get you there. Thanks.
Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness. Although a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. That's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Though your heart is aching, smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you.
Again, what a marvellous life. We cannot think of Michael's death without thinking about our own mortality, maybe even resolving to live a fuller, more meaningful life of our own. His passing reminds us that we won't live forever, causes us to reflect a little. Are there any things that we need to change? Do we need to reconsider our priorities so that we can make the most of our lives? Can we learn one thing from Michael? Can we learn from Michael that relationships with family and friends are the most important things that we can have? I hope that our time together today brings us a little closer to each other and brings each one of us a degree of comfort as we pay tribute to and remember Michael's life. After the next song, the family would like to extend an invitation to some light refreshments in the facility that is across the car park. And after that, for those that would like, Rod has invited everybody back to the farm at 318 Palmdale Road, should you so desire.